A crazy woman just tried to steal my Tesla keys right out of my hands. Brenda Hamilton, everyone called her Bree, stood in my driveway with what looked like forged ownership papers, claiming my red Tesla was hers and demanding I hand over the keys immediately. When I refused, she called 911 and told them I was the thief. My name is Jake Morrison, 2 tours in Afghanistan, lost my left leg, came home, and built a food truck empire from scratch. That business became Tank Smokehouse, a chain I now run across 4 locations in the state. That Tesla? I bought it with cash, every dollar earned through blood and sweat. After 10 years of grinding, building from a single food truck into something real, that car wasn't just a luxury. It was proof that the American dream still works if you're willing to fight for it. The Model Y was registered under my name, fully insured, every piece of paperwork in order. I learned the hard way that in the civilian world, you have to dot every I and cross every T. Brenda introduced herself as the HOA president with a smile that looked like it came straight from a plastic surgery catalog. She approached while I was unloading my barbecue equipment after a charity event. Her eyes scanned the commercial-grade smokers and grills like I'd somehow dirted the neighborhood. "Oh, you're in catering," she asked, voice dripping with subtle judgment. Then her gaze landed on the Tesla. Something changed in her expression. Beautiful car. Must have taken quite a loan for someone in the service industry. That comment made my jaw tighten. But years of dealing with people like her taught me how to keep my cool. "Actually," I said calmly, "I paid cash. Business has been blessed." The shock on her face was almost comical. She clearly expected me to be embarrassed or defensive about my situation. Instead, I stood there in worn jeans and a Tank Smokehouse shirt, radiating the quiet confidence that only comes when you know exactly what you've built. Bree quickly recalculated. "Oh, how interesting," she said, her tone shifting slightly. "This neighborhood has certain regulations about commercial vehicles, you know." I kept my response light. "Good thing this is my personal vehicle, then." That moment planted the seeds of our conflict, though I didn't realize it at the time. Bree kept up the fake pleasantries, talking about property values and community standards, but her eyes never left the Tesla. There was something calculating in her stare, like she was already planning her next move. As I finished unloading, I caught her watching from her living room window. When she thought I wasn't looking, she pulled out her phone and made a call. Riverside Hills seemed peaceful enough, tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, the kind of place where kids could ride bikes safely. I chose it because it represented stability, something I never really had growing up. My parents lived 20 minutes away, and being close to them after years overseas felt like closing a chapter. The Tesla wasn't just showing off. It was practical for client meetings and reflected the professional image I'd worked so hard to build. What I didn't know was that Bree wasn't just another nosy HOA president. She was a predator who had already destroyed another veteran's life in this same neighborhood. Mr. Peterson, a retired Marine who started a landscaping business, had been targeted by Bree before. Through relentless HOA harassment, false complaints, and rumors, she made his life so miserable he eventually sold and moved away. But I walked into this blind, focused on settling into my new home and expanding my business. As I closed the trunk and headed inside, I had no idea that Bree was already researching everything she could find about Jake Morrison, plotting her next move with military precision. That night, I unpacked boxes in my new kitchen, hanging my bronze star and purple heart on the wall where I could see them every morning. The house felt too big after years in apartments, but it meant something, putting down roots. I bought it outright, just like the Tesla, because debt made me nervous after seeing too many fellow veterans struggle. The American dream I fought for overseas was finally within reach, and I was determined to protect it. If I had known what Bree had planned, I might have reconsidered that peaceful neighborhood. But then again, I survived an IED blast in Afghanistan. How dangerous could one suburban HOA president really be? Turns out very. Bree wasn't just any random Karen. She was a professional predator, and I had unknowingly painted a target on my back. Her research into my background was more thorough than I gave her credit for. Within a week, she found my VA disability rating, my business loan history, and enough details about my military service to feel confident in her next step. What I didn't know was that Bree had a track record. She enjoyed targeting what she called undesirable elements, small business owners, veterans, anyone who didn't fit her vision of perfection. And thanks to the charity barbecue I hosted, I had stepped into her crosshairs. The event had gone perfectly until Bree arrived fashionably late, her designer knockoffs gleaming in the afternoon sun. I was serving free pulled pork to the entire neighborhood, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Families were laughing, kids were playing, and for the first time since moving in, I felt like I might actually belong. Then Bree made her entrance. Such generosity, she said loud enough for others to hear. Must be nice having taxpayer support for all this. The comment hit like a punch to the gut. Not because I was ashamed of my service, but because she was trying to diminish everything I'd built. For a second, I was back in that Humvee in Afghanistan, watching my buddies carry me to safety as blood poured from where my leg used to be. My teammate Rodriguez had whispered, "You earned this tank. You earned every damn thing that comes after." Carmen Davis, a teacher who lived 3 houses down, stepped in to defend me. "Jake sacrificed for this country. He's earned everything through service and hard work." Bree smiled that fake smile again. "Of course, Carmen. Teachers always support charity cases." The way she said charity cases, with that calculated cruelty, made something cold settle in my chest. I'd been called worse things by better people, but this was different. It was designed to humiliate. I stayed quiet, focusing on breathing techniques from anger management therapy, but my hands clenched involuntarily. Charity case? Ma'am, I'd lost a leg for this country, not my dignity. A week later, I found a citation tucked under the Tesla's windshield wiper, commercial vehicle violation, $200 fine. It claimed I hadn't properly disclosed the car's use to the HOA and city authorities. I stared at the paper, feeling that familiar knot form in my stomach. Everything was documented: insurance, registration, purchase records. Someone had deliberately manipulated records or created fake ones. The fine itself wasn't the problem. $200 wouldn't break me, but the implications were clear. Bree was building a paper trail to justify whatever came next. At the emergency HOA board meeting, Bree presided like a judge, flanked by 4 other board members who looked uncomfortable with the whole thing. The community center meeting room had that sterile official vibe that always made my skin crawl. "Mr. Morrison," she began, voice dripping with fake concern, "we've received reports about undisclosed commercial activity associated with your vehicle." I calmly presented my documents: registration, insurance, bank records showing the cash purchase. Everything was legitimate. Everything was properly filed. Bree examined the papers with theatrical scrutiny before delivering her verdict: documents can be adjusted post-purchase. Perhaps there was some misunderstanding about the vehicle's intended use. Regulations can be interpreted flexibly depending on circumstances. That's when I realized what I was really dealing with. This wasn't about rules or compliance. It was about power, control, and someone who couldn't stand seeing a veteran succeed in her perfect little neighborhood. She suggested a reasonable solution. Maybe I should consider alternative transportation arrangements that better aligned with their community standards. The other board members shifted uncomfortably. They knew it was a shakedown. I thanked them politely, gathered my documents, and left without giving Bree the reaction she wanted. But as I drove home that night, passing perfectly manicured lawns and expensive cars, I realized I was in a fight whether I wanted one or not. The next morning, I found a long scratch along the Tesla's passenger side that definitely hadn't been there the night before. Positioned exactly where someone would brush against the car while walking by, plausibly